Welcome to the video solutions for the AQA Functional Skills English Level 2 Writing Sample Paper. In this video we will go through the questions and you can get a better idea of what you want your answers to look like, as well as what to look out for when planning your answers. Before we take a look at the questions, let's have a look at the criteria that you'll be marked on so that you understand what you are being assessed on. So you need to craft a fit-for-purpose response with an appropriate level of development to engage the reader and using appropriate register. So that means that your response needs to be engaging. It needs to draw the reader in, and it needs to have an appropriate level of development. So you need to be including details and developing your ideas by explaining them with reasons or adding additional information. It has to be fit for purpose, so you have to consider the purpose that you've been asked to write for and adapt your response to the question. You also need to use an appropriate register or tone, so you need to adapt what you're writing to the audience. If you're writing for a professional audience, you'll want to use a formal tone and register, and if you're writing for, say, a friend, you would want to use an informal tone and register. You want to use appropriate formatting and make sure that your answer's the right length. So you'll often be given a word count and you need to try and stay within that. And you also need to include appropriate formatting features based on the text type. So for example, if you're writing an article, you'll need to include a heading, perhaps use subheadings and include paragraphs. You need to use a range of simple and complex words and phrases correctly. So vary the sentence structures that you're using and use a range of words and phrases. Use a variety of sentence structures, including complex sentences, correctly. So again, making sure that both your word choices and your sentence structures are varied throughout the text. Use some longer sentences and shorter sentences, use longer words and shorter words. And make sure that any words that you're using are suitable for the task. You want to provide a clear and logical sequencing of points in your text. So think before you start writing your answer how you're going to order the points you want to make in a logical way. And you need to include an appropriate level of detail for the purpose. So read the question carefully and think about appropriate details that you can include in the answer. We also need to consider spelling, punctuation and grammar. So make sure that your spelling is correct and can convey your meaning effectively. Try to use specialist words in your answers as well that are adapted to the specific purpose of the text. You also need to demarcate your sentences correctly. So that means that you're using capital letters at the start of each sentence and full stops at the end. And you need to be using a range of other punctuation correctly. So for example, you want to be using commas and apostrophes accurately. You need to use these markers to ensure smooth and efficient reading. So make sure that your punctuation is helping the reader rather than hindering them when they're reading. So helping to make your meaning really clear. You need to make sure that you have few grammatical errors. So all of your writing needs to make sense. You also need to use modality devices appropriately. So modality devices include modal verbs like might, could, will or should. So make sure that you are doing that correctly and make sure that you have some subject and verb agreement within your answers. So for example, you would say I think, but you would say he or she thinks. So you need to make sure that you're changing verbs depending on the subject that you're using. So make sure that your spelling, punctuation and grammar are accurate, as well as having a good composition for your text. So now let's take a look at the first question. Remember that you will have 2 questions to answer in your exam and you will need to answer both questions. Make sure that you're answering both so that you can get as many marks as possible. So you have received the following leaflet from your local council. Bringing people in our community together. We've received funding from the National Lottery to support local events. We're looking for ideas for local events which would help to bring the community together. So anything that would get people out of their houses, talking to each other and enjoying themselves together. Send us ideas about what you think might work. Ideas could include food, music, dance, competitions, stalls. Anything at all can be considered. Give us good reasons for your suggestions to help us decide. To contribute, send an email to Ashraf at livelylocal@email.com. And our task is to write an email to Ashraf responding to the council's request. Your email should be approximately 150 to 200 words. You should always plan your answer, use correct spelling, punctuation and grammar, and write clearly and effectively. So let's break this question down and figure out what we need to do. So when you first get a question, the first thing that you should be looking for is the text type that you've been asked to write. And in this case, we've been asked to write an email. So we will need to be using formatting features that are suitable for an email. We also need to consider the audience. So in this case, we need to send an email to Ashraf, and we have been given an email address to send this email to. So make sure that you are using that in your answer and addressing Ashraf personally. So our audience is a member of the council because it is a request from the council. So make sure that you're writing formally in order to respond to this request. We also need to consider the purpose of the question. So what are we actually needing to write about? Well, we need to give our ideas for local events. And these events have to get people out of their houses. So we have to do something that is either outdoors or out of people's individual houses. And we want people to talk to each other, socialise and enjoy themselves together. So think creatively about ideas that you could do. For example, you might want to hold a community sports day. That would definitely get people out of their houses and socialising. So we've got some examples of other ideas that we could include, like food, music, dance, competitions or stalls. So you could hold a fair of some kind, or a music festival or a food festival. And we need to give good reasons for our suggestions. So that means that we need to be persuasive. We need to be supporting all of our ideas and opinions with good reasons, good evidence. And we need to be writing 150 to 200 words for this question. So make sure you are staying within that word count. And it's really important to plan your answer in advance so that you can make sure that you're writing in a logical order and you've got plenty of ideas to write about. So now let's take a look at a model answer to this question. To livelylocal@email.com. Bringing people together. Dear Ashraf, can you remember the last time you went out into nature and interacted with the community? Our community really lacks connections between people and nature. My idea is to hold a community picnic in Wetherby Park, which will certainly improve these connections. People of any age will be able to participate in the community picnic. It will be an important way for different groups to come together and socialise. Due to the large number of elderly people in the community, the picnic will be essential in combating loneliness and isolation. My idea will give them the fantastic opportunity to pass on their wise words to different generations. Not only will the picnic be a great way to socialise, people will also get the chance to try a range of dishes from different cultures. We could ask the picnic goers to bring their favourite food or a dish that has particular significance to them. In this way, my idea will celebrate cuisine and nature. The picnic will also bring people together, allowing them to have an enjoyable social experience and make connections within the community. I look forward to hearing from you. Yours sincerely, Amy Layton. So now let's go through the marking criteria and determine what makes this a good answer. And we'll start by looking at the punctuation. So each sentence in your answers needs to start with a capital letter and end with a full stop. You can also use question marks or exclamation marks at the end of your sentences if this is appropriate. So we've got capital letters and full stops at the start and end of every sentence in this answer. We also have capital letters for proper nouns. So proper nouns include things like names, so we've got Ashraf there, and we also use capital letters in titles, so bringing people together there. So make sure that you are using capital letters correctly. We do have one slight error with a capital letter here. Sincerely should not be capitalised here. So take care to make sure that you're using capital letters correctly. We also have commas that have been used throughout the answer, and these add further detail to sentences and separate out clauses. So for example, we have in this way and then a comma because we are going to introduce this idea. My idea will celebrate cuisine and nature. And then we have another comma here. The picnic will also bring people together. And then we have a comma to give a little bit of breathing space before we move on to another idea that is connected to this previous one. So this will allow them to have an enjoyable social experience. So make sure that you're trying to use commas in your answer to extend your sentences and add other ideas. Other punctuation that we have in this answer includes question marks. So we've got that question mark at the start to introduce the email with a question, and it also indicates what the email will be about. So can you remember the last time you went out into nature and interacted with the community? So that really draws the reader in with a question there. And we have an exclamation mark, and this has been used to encourage the reader to be interested in and excited about the idea. So it will give them this opportunity to pass on their wise words. So ensure that you're using basic punctuation correctly in your answers. Make sure that you know how to use capital letters, full stops, commas and apostrophes correctly. And try to include some more ambitious punctuation, such as question marks and exclamation marks in your answer, to really impress the examiner with the range of punctuation. Next, let's consider grammar and spelling. So each sentence that you write will need to be accurate and it needs to make sense when it stands on its own. So we know that the grammar in this answer is really strong because we read all of it out and everything made perfect sense. You need to make sure that everything is matching up. So whenever you're using singular words and plural words, you need to match things up together. A good example of this is our community really lacks connections. So because we're talking about a community here, we're talking about multiple people in the community, we've used lacks as a form of this verb here. Now, if we were talking about an individual person, such as you or I, we would say I lack or you lack. But we've got lacks because we've got multiple people there. So make sure that you're thinking about the subject of the sentence, so the people that you might be talking about, and whether you need to change the verb to accommodate for that person. So make sure that you read through your answers as well to make sure that every single sentence makes sense on its own. Now let's think about the spelling, which is correct throughout the answer, and we've got some more difficult to spell words that have been included here. So for example, we've got connections there, we have community, and we have participate. So you should try to include some specialist words, and this means that you should include vocabulary that is suited to the purpose of the question. So here we're talking about bringing people together in the community, so using words like community and connections is really effective within the answer. We've also got all of the basic words down as well, so we've got words like to and be and the spelled correctly as well. So make sure that you practice your spelling before the exam, that you are comfortable with basic spellings. It's also a really good idea to check your spelling after you've written your answer, just in case you've made any mistakes. Good spelling, punctuation and grammar is really important, as this carries nearly half the marks in the exam. Your good spelling, punctuation, grammar will also help you to make sure that your answer is clear and that all of it makes sense when you read it out loud. It's a good idea to get a friend or a family member to read through some practice answers and make sure that every single sentence makes sense, and see if they can spot any spelling errors or any incorrect use of punctuation. Now let's think about the detail and length of the answer. So the first thing that we should do when considering length is we should take another look at the question and see if there is a word count. And here we've been told that we need to write 150 to 200 words. So you need to make sure that you are meeting that word count in your answer. And this answer meets that word count effectively. You also need to ensure that any details that you're including are relevant to the question. So in the question we were asked for an idea to bring the community together and get them out of the house. And we were given a list of potential options here. So anything to do with food, music, dance, competitions and stalls. And this answer considers food, so we're talking about a picnic here. So you could use that list or you could come up with your own idea. And then we've explained some of the benefits. So we've got ideas about combating loneliness and isolation. We've got details about the older generation passing on their wise words, saying that it will be a great way to socialise, and explaining that it will celebrate cuisine and nature. So talking about a lot of positives here, because we're really trying to persuade this council member Ashraf that we have a really good idea that will improve connections and be open to everyone. So to add details, you can add information or ideas and you can explain your ideas with reasons as well. But you need to make sure that any details that you add are really closely related to the question, because if you start talking about other topics, then you might lose marks because you're not focusing on the question. If you struggle to add details and you're struggling for words, then make sure that you plan your answer really carefully and generate lots of ideas using a mind map before you start. Now let's think about how this has been formatted. So whenever you're thinking about formatting or organising your answer, you need to think about the text type. And really helpfully, we have a reminder of this here. So we've been told that we need to write an email. And we've got this really helpful template that will help us out with this. So we know that we will need a to address. We've also got a little CC box, and you can leave that blank because we're not wanting to email anybody else. We're just wanting to use the email that was given in the question, livelylocal@email.com. So often you'll be given an email address that you can use, and if not, then you can just make one up and pop it in there. But it's really important that you have a to address so that you are sending the email to the right person. We also need a subject line. Now this is just a brief summary of what the email will be about. So in this case, bringing people together. Or you could come up with another subject line like community picnic. So make sure you're including a to address and a subject line. You can also include an address that you're sending from. Make sure that you don't use your own email address. You want to protect your details during the exam. And then we've got a polite address, so Dear Ashraf. And following this, we have a number of paragraphs. And you need to make sure that you're using paragraphs in your answers, because this will divide up your ideas into clear sections and make it much easier for the reader to understand. Finally, we have a sign-off. and we've used yours sincerely here. Now the reason for this is that we know the name of the person that we are sending the email to. So if you know the name of the person, you would use yours sincerely, and if you don't know the name of the person, then you should use yours faithfully. So familiarise yourself with that difference. And then right at the end, we have the name of the sender, so the person that's sending this email. So make sure that you memorise all of these different elements of an email so that if an email comes up in your exam, you'll be comfortable with formatting it correctly. Now let's think about cohesion in this answer. So cohesion essentially means that your ideas are joined up and everything flows on from each other in a way that makes sense. So all of your answer needs to be sort of consistent and joined together. How do we do this? Well, we need to make sure that sentences are flowing on from one another and are linked together. So whenever you're writing a paragraph, all of the sentences in the same paragraph should be about the same thing. So, for example, in this paragraph, we are focusing on the ages of people that can participate. So we've mentioned in the first sentence here that people of any age can go to this picnic. And then the following sentence follows on from this idea, saying that it will help different groups, so different age groups, come together and socialise. So we've then followed on saying that due to the large number of elderly people in the community, the picnic will be essential in combating loneliness and isolation. So we've mentioned that people of any age can participate and different groups can, and now we're moving on to talk about elderly people, which links back to people of any age. And then finally, my idea will give them the fantastic opportunity to pass on their wise words to different generations. So we're referring to them here, and that means the elderly people that we talked about in the previous sentence. So make sure that you are consistently writing sentences that are really well linked together within each paragraph. You also need to make sure that each paragraph is flowing on from the previous one. So you need to be writing in a really logical order. And we've done that really well in this answer. So the first paragraph introduces what the email is about. So it introduces this idea to have a picnic and bring people together. Then the second paragraph explains who will participate in this picnic and explains some benefits of interactions between generations. And then finally, paragraph 3 follows on really well to further explain the benefits of the idea for everybody. Finally, we have some connective words and punctuation, and these make sentences and paragraphs more cohesive and join ideas together. So, for example, we have ways of connecting sentences. So we've got a comma used here to add the idea that not only will the picnic bring people together, but it will also allow them to have this enjoyable social experience. We've also got a connective phrase here, which will, to give an explanation of what the picnic, what the effects of the picnic will be. So we've got a comma and then which will to sort of give an explanation here that it will improve connections in the community. We've also got due to. Now this connective phrase is used to provide an explanation. So there's a large number of elderly people in the community, and this means that the picnic will combat loneliness and isolation in this group. So make sure that you're trying to use a few connective words in your answers, you're joining your sentences up together, and your paragraphs flow in a logical order. This will really help you to achieve cohesion in your answers, which will gain you high marks. Now let's think about a really crucial aspect of the marking criteria, which is language and register. Your writing has to have the right kind of tone and style to match up with the audience and purpose. So let's just remind ourselves of the audience and purpose given in the question. So we need to email Ashraf, that is our audience, and he is a member of the council. So the council has requested this they want you to bring people in the community together. That is the purpose here. We're trying to make connections within the community by holding a local event. So we've got the audience and purpose there, and we need to be persuasive because we have to give good reasons for our suggestions. We're trying to get the council to accept our idea and take it forward. We're trying to get funding for this idea. So we need to be focused on the purpose in the question, an idea to bring the community together. And throughout this answer, we are focused on that purpose. We are focused on this community picnic idea. It's really well suited to the audience. So we're trying to attract members of the local community, and we've got people of any age and lots of different groups that are able to participate here. So this makes it seem like it's a really inclusive event, and that's quite persuasive to the reader. We generally have a very positive tone because we're trying to include Ashraf to go ahead with this idea, and we're writing really persuasively. So we have words like improve to suggest that this will have a positive impact on the community. We've also got words like important and essential, which suggest that this is a really important idea. It's really needed in the community. It's not just something that would be nice, it's something that's actually crucial to bring the community together. We've also got that question at the start that we mentioned earlier, and that really draws the reader in and gets them thinking about the event in a positive way. So make sure that whenever you're trying to persuade people, you are using some persuasive words and techniques. Let's think about the style of the text. So whenever you're writing a text, you need to consider how formal it should be. We've got a somewhat informal style here that uses direct address to try and make the text more conversational and draw the reader in. So we've got the word you there to directly address the reader. We've also got some informal things like exclamations to try and persuade the reader here. But it is still reasonably formal. So Ashraf is a professional and he's working for this company, Lively Local. So there's no use of slang and there are no contractions used in the answer because we need to stay reasonably formal so that Ashraf will take our ideas seriously. So contractions include words like can't, won't and don't that bring two words together using an apostrophe. And slang words, colloquial language, are the kinds of things that you would only say to a friend or family member. And we don't have any of that here. So it's really well suited to the audience and purpose set out in the question. And you need to make sure that all of your answers are consistently matching up with the audience and purpose as well. The final thing that we need to consider is joining up lots of different ideas to make some longer sentences in our answers. So you should always use a variety of sentence lengths whenever you're writing an answer in your exam. This will make it really interesting and easy for the reader to understand. Longer sentences will show that you can make connections between multiple ideas and pieces of information. So, for example, we have the picnic will also bring people together. So that's one part of the sentence, saying what the picnic will do, and then we have a comma to connect to another idea. So this will be allowing them to have an enjoyable social experience. And then we've got this connective word here, and, to join another idea onto the sentence. So it will also allow them to make connections within the community. So make sure that you're using commas and connective words within your sentences to create some longer sentences that bring multiple ideas together. But make sure that your sentences don't get too long because this can be confusing and you can lose track of what you're writing and it will stop it from making sense. So make sure that you read through your answer really carefully to ensure that you don't have any sentences that are really long and complicated. So overall, let's consider what makes this a great answer. We've talked about the spelling, punctuation and grammar, all of which is accurate, which makes this really clear and easy for the reader to understand. The punctuation use is also effective in persuading the reader. So we've got that question used at the start there and the exclamation here. We've also got correct formatting in the answer, so it is very appropriate for an email, and we've got paragraphs that have been used throughout to divide up the answer effectively. The answer all makes sense and it flows in a really logical way. So we've got the paragraphs following on from each other in a logical order, and we have sentences that match up with each other within each paragraph. The writing is really appropriate for the audience and purpose that has been specified in the question, and we've got persuasive words and techniques throughout. So overall, it's a really effective answer to the question, and you should try to replicate this in your own answers. Why not have a go at pausing the video and writing your own answer to this question? So now let's have a look at the second question. You are a reporter from the Whitby Post, a local newspaper. You have visited Carol's fitness centre and gym and made the following notes. 6 Colwyn Park Terrace, Whitby. Manager Gina Carroll. Gina at fitness.co.uk. Safe environment, trained staff, classes, latest equipment, swimming pools and steam room. Prices. Single visit £5, monthly membership £20 per month, and annual membership £180, so £15 per month. Write an article for the local newspaper about the new fitness centre and gym, including any strengths and weaknesses you found. Remember to plan your answer, use correct spelling, punctuation and grammar, and write accurately in sentences and paragraphs. And you've got some space to plan your answer there, so make sure that you are making a plan before you start writing. So what do we need to do in this question? Well, we need to consider the text type first of all. So we've been told that we need to write an article, and the purpose of this article is to point out the strengths and weaknesses of the new fitness centre and gym. We're including these strengths and weaknesses, but we might want to also include some facts about the fitness centre and gym that would be helpful for people. So it's sort of a review article that we're writing here. And whenever we write a review, we will need some facts, opinions about the strengths and weaknesses, and then possibly some recommendations for readers. So we've got some ideas of what we could write here. We've got ideas that it's a safe environment, that the staff are trained and classes are provided, for example. So you might want to focus on these 3 areas or any other area that is mentioned here. We've also been given an email address, so we might want to include some contact details for people to find more information here. And we've got the address of the gym as well, so we could include some information for people about that. Then we've got the information about the prices, which we could include in our answer, and we could say that this is a strength because these are reasonably cheap prices, or we could say that it's a weakness, for example, if there were other gyms with cheaper prices in the area. Who is our audience for this question? So we've been told that we are writing for the Whitby Post, which is a local newspaper. So our audience is a general audience of local people. And because we're writing about a gym, we're probably thinking about quite active people here. So we need to plan our answer based on this information. Let's take a look at a model answer to see an effective answer to this question. Carol's Fitness Centre and Gym. Above the barbell. The new gym, Carol's Fitness Centre and Gym, opened last week and has been a hit in the community. It offers multiple classes, a spa equipped with a steam room, and a state-of-the-art swimming pool for only £20 per month. Don't worry if committing to a monthly membership is too much of a stretch. They also offer a day pass for just £5. Why Carroll's? Carroll's is a superb and safe environment. You can use any of the lockers to store your belongings, and there is CCTV in the car park. There are lots of well-trained staff who are always available to assist with any fitness-related queries you might have. I took part in the dance aerobics class. It was a great workout. The instructor was incredibly friendly and went through all of the exercises at a pace that allowed everyone to keep up. In addition to dance aerobics, they also offer spinning circuits and yoga. Any drawbacks? Drawbacks of the gym include a lack of a full range of dumbbells, missing kettlebells, and outdated yoga mats. These issues are a disappointment as the gym promises access to the latest equipment. In addition to this, it would be advisable for the gym to invest in a new cleaning team, as dirty towels were left all around the changing room. I would recommend Carroll's Fitness Centre and Gym to any beginner due to the professionalism and warmth of the staff. However, if you're more into your fitness, perhaps consider somewhere with more equipment and an established setup. So just like we did with the example answer for question 1, we're going to go through the marking criteria and take a look at what makes this a good answer. And again, let's start with punctuation. So remember that you will need a capital letter at the start of every sentence and a full stop at the end. And we have this throughout the answer. We were also using capital letters for proper nouns, including the names of people and companies. So we've got Carroll's Fitness Centre and Gym, that is a company, and Carroll is a name presumably. We've also got capital letters used for an abbreviation here, so CCTV. Do we have any other capital letters? No, we're just mentioning Carroll's Fitness Centre and Gym and making sure to capitalise that throughout the answer. We also use capital letters to start our subheadings. So make sure that you're doing that as well. And we've got capital letters in the heading too. So we've used capital letters in all of the nouns that have been used within the heading. So make sure that you familiarise yourself with where to use capital letters. It's quite common to capitalise all of the nouns in a title, and you definitely need to be capitalising the first word of a title or subtitle. Commas have been used throughout the answer as well, and these add further detail to sentences. So, for example, we've got however, and then we've got a comma where you would take a breath if you were reading it out loud. So however, if you are more into your fitness, and then we've got another comma to separate that from the next part of the sentence. So we're dividing up the different clauses, the different ideas within a sentence using these commas here. And you need to be doing that in your answers as well. What else have we got here? Well, we've got some question marks, for example, used in this subheading here. And these show the questions that are being discussed. So we've got sort of a question and answer format here where readers have these questions that they might possibly ask about the gym, and we're getting these answers to these questions. So that's really effective. We've also got an apostrophe every time that we've used Carroll's, because presumably Carroll is the name of the person that owns the company. It's possibly a surname, and we need a possessive apostrophe because whenever we've got somebody owning something, then we'll need to show that they own it. They own the fitness centre and gym in this case, using apostrophes there. So familiarise yourself with how to use commas and apostrophes correctly, and try to include a variety of punctuation in your answer. Other examples of punctuation we have are hyphens. So we've got state of the art there, and we've got these words have been joined together using hyphens to create sort of one word with a single meaning. So state of the art has a single meaning there. It means really good and well crafted. We've also got a dash that has been used to add some additional information to the sentence. So we've got, don't worry if committing to a monthly membership is too much of a stretch. And then we've got a dash to add an explanation here. So they also offer a day pass for just £5. So try to be ambitious with your punctuation and try to include a wide variety, as has been done in this answer. Next, let's consider grammar. So every sentence in this answer makes sense on its own, and we've got verbs and nouns that agree with each other. So if we take a look at this fourth paragraph here, we've got these issues are a disappointment. So because we're talking about several issues here, we've used the word are to describe them. Now, if we were talking about just one issue, we would say this issue is a disappointment rather than these issues are. So we've got all of this is plural to match up with each other. So make sure that your answers are matching up verbs and nouns depending on whether they're singular and plural as well. We've also got dirty towels were left all around the changing room. Now, if we were talking about just one, then we would say a dirty towel was left rather than were. So just make sure that you're matching up your nouns and verbs depending on whether they're singular and plural. We also need to consider the spelling. So your spelling needs to be as accurate as possible, and you should try to use some longer, more specialist words that might be a little bit more tricky to spell. So in this first paragraph here, we have words like equipped, and we've got membership as well. And we've got environment here too. So make sure that you're trying to adapt to the topic. So we've got words to do with gyms such as aerobics that have been used here as well. And we've got things like kettlebells and dumbbells. So we've included a range of specialist vocabulary, and we also have correct spelling throughout the answer for other words. Remember that spelling, punctuation and grammar are really important because they carry quite high marks and they help you to ensure that all of your writing makes sense. So make sure that you practice and that you familiarise yourself with how to use a range of punctuation effectively. We also need to consider how long and detailed the answer is. So, as always, we need to check the question to see if we've been given a word count here. In this question, we haven't got a word count. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to think about the details that we've been asked to include, and we want to be writing somewhere between 3 and 5 paragraphs. So in this answer, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs in total. So it is on the longer side. So make sure that you're writing somewhere around this amount. It doesn't matter if it's just a little bit shorter or a little bit longer, but try not to repeat any information and try to make sure that all of your details are appropriate for the question. So what did the question ask us to do? Well, we are using these notes here, and we need to write an article about the strengths and weaknesses of the new fitness centre and gym. And we also want to be providing a little bit of information because we're writing for the local newspaper. So this is a news article as well. And news articles tend to be quite informative. So we've included a lot of these features here. We have a description including facts about the gym. So for example, we've got £20 per month and £5. And we have some opinions that have been included as well. So we're saying that these prices are a strength because they are only £20 per month and just £5. So trying to convince the reader that these prices are very reasonable. We have some more positives that have been discussed here, so some more strengths of the gym. It's a superb and safe environment, and there are lots of well-trained staff. So using the notes here, we've got trained staff that has been mentioned here and the safe environment. So use these notes, they can really help you to come up with some details for your answer. We also have disadvantages. So we were told in the question that we need to talk about any disadvantages, and we have any drawbacks that have been mentioned in this paragraph here. We've then got some overall recommendations. So remember that because we're considering the strengths and weaknesses of this gym, we're kind of writing a little bit of a review here. And reviews often include recommendations, so it's appropriate to include this at the end. And we're addressing the readers, saying that for beginners, the professionalism and warmth of the staff make this a really great gym. So make sure that any details that you include are really matching up with the question effectively. We've got a critical evaluation of the gym here with strengths and weaknesses. We've got information from the notes that were given in the question. And you can also add your own ideas. So remember that if you need to add any details, you can go back to the notes that were given in the question, or you can create a mind map to come up with a variety of ideas. You can also explain your ideas a bit further, so add little bits onto sentences to give more ideas and opinions about the topic. But make sure that any details that you're adding are consistently related to the question. Now let's think about the formatting and organisation of this answer. So because we're writing an article that's been mentioned here, we need to be including a heading, and we've got one here. So we know that it's about Carol's Fitness Centre and Gym, so that's a really appropriate heading there. And then we're asking if it's above the barbell, so we're using a bit of a pun there about the gym to say that this is going to be a review. They're going to ask this question, they're going to consider whether the gym is actually any good. And because we are writing an article, we also might want to use subheadings. So these pinpoint to the reader what each section is going to be about. And they're really nice and short, asking questions here to create an easy to understand question and answer structure. So try to use a heading and some subheadings whenever you're writing an article. Something that this article doesn't have that you might want to use is the author's name. So this is quite often used in articles, as well as the date as well, because we're writing for a newspaper here. You could also try to include some more organisational features. So things like bullet points could be used to mention the different facilities that are available at the gym, or to list the advantages in a more succinct and easy to understand way. But what we do have is paragraphs, and these really help to divide up the different parts of the answer and provide a clear structure for readers. Remember that whenever you are introducing a new topic or a new idea, you should start a new paragraph. Using paragraphs effectively will help you to make your answers cohesive. So your writing should flow in a really logical order with different paragraphs that build on each other. So we have different paragraphs in this answer serving different purposes. We've got the first paragraph explaining what the article will be about and talking about some positives, including the prices here. Then we've got the second paragraph, which shows the positives of the gym and mentions several of the facilities. The third paragraph moves on from this to give details of what the class they attended was like. This links to the previous paragraph where they say, I took part in the dance aerobics class. So this is really cohesive because the paragraphs have been linked together here. The next paragraph then explains some of the negatives, some of the drawbacks of the gym facilities. So contrasting with the previous paragraphs. And then finally, we finish with a recommendation for the reader based on all of these previous paragraphs. So this flows in a really logical order that makes sense to the reader, with an introduction followed by the positives and then the negatives before we get overall recommendations. The answer also uses connective words really effectively to link together ideas within sentences and within paragraphs. So, for example, we've got the word and that has been used to add some additional information to sentences. So, the gym opened last week and it has been a hit in the community. So, adding that additional idea to that sentence. And we also have and used in lists as well. So, it's got not just got classes and a spa equipped with a steam room, but it's also got this state-of-the-art swimming pool. Other connective words that we have in the answer include also. So that has a similar purpose to and. It's to add information to the sentence. And remember, we've got that dash there, which is also signifying addition of information to a sentence, a bit of an explanation that's given here. Let's take a look out for any other connective words that we have. Well, we've got in addition to this. So we're linking to the previous sentence and adding on some new information in this sentence. And then we've got the word as. Now this has a slightly different purpose. We're not adding additional information, we are explaining. So it would be advisable for the gym to invest in a new cleaning team. And then we've got the word as because we're going to offer an explanation here, as dirty towels were left all around the changing room. Other connective phrases that we have include due to. So this is going to add an explanation as well. So it essentially has the same meaning as because of. So I would recommend Carol's Fitness Centre and Gym to any beginner, and then we've got due to explain why. So we've got the professionalism and warmth of the staff is a reason why they would recommend the centre. So try to use connectives and punctuation like commas and dashes to link together ideas within your sentences and between paragraphs. This will help you to make your answer really cohesive and help you to connect different ideas together. So we've thought about how to lay out our answer to make it really cohesive. We also need to think about the language and register. So remember that you're thinking about tone and style when you're writing. And we need to have an appropriate tone and style to match up with the audience and purpose. So as a quick reminder, our audience here is an audience of local people because we're writing for a local newspaper. And because we're talking about a gym, we're likely going to be writing to people that are interested in fitness and exercise. So that's our audience, and our purpose is to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses. And we're also writing an article for a newspaper, so we're going to be informing people. We're going to give information about the fitness centre and gym. So the answer to this question needs to be focused on that audience and purpose throughout. And it is very much focused on evaluating the gym facilities and giving information about the gym. And it includes strengths and weaknesses in the style of a review article. It's very much suited to the general audience of local people. So we've got references to the community here. So it's clear that they are recognising that they're talking to the local community when they're writing. We also have a bit of an understanding of different people within this general audience. So we've got references to both beginners and people that are more into their fitness. So that shows a recognition that in a general audience, you're going to have people with sort of different goals, different aims from reading this article. So it's really well adapted to the audience there. And we've got an informal tone as well. So we're giving a load of subjective opinions throughout this answer. And that means that we want to appeal to the reader. We want to be quite personal. So we have colloquial phrases like a hit in the community. We've also got colloquial language like too much of a stretch. So we're using these phrases that you might use with friends and family to sort of reach out and appeal to the audience. We also have some contractions to make this slightly less formal. So for example, we have don't here. So this is a contraction of do and not. And whenever you are making a contraction, you need to be putting in an apostrophe wherever the missing letter is. So the missing letter is the O in not, so we've used the apostrophe there. And this makes it slightly less formal. So it's really engaging to the reader and it adds a more conversational feel to the text. We also have direct address. So we have the use of the word you. Now this directly appeals to the reader and engages and connects with them. So the informality of this writing really helps to appeal to the reader, engage them, and to show the opinions of the writer in quite an informal and conversational way. The writing is also really persuasive and informative. So not only do we have a range of facts and details about the gym, so for example they give classes in dance aerobics, spinning circuits and yoga. We've also got loads of opinions and loads of persuasive techniques that persuade the reader to accept the writer's views on the gym. So we have that hit in the community, which is the opinion of the author, and we've got some opinions that have been included in the conclusion, saying that the staff were warm and professional. So make sure that when you are writing your own answers, you're reading the question really carefully to correctly identify the purpose of the text and the audience, and then you need to be adapting your answer to match with this. So think carefully about whether you're writing to inform or persuade. Think about how formal you have to be and what effect you want to create on the reader. Next, we'll consider whether this answer has any longer sentences that have multiple ideas contained within them. Remember that you should use these types of sentences to show the examiner that you can make connections between multiple ideas or pieces of information. So we've seen that we've got a range of punctuation and connective words that make sentences just a bit more complicated and add some detail. So for example, we have, however, if you are more into your fitness, perhaps consider somewhere with more equipment and an established setup. So we've started with however to provide a contrast to the previous sentence where they were saying that they would recommend the gym. So we know that we're going to get the opposite opinion given here. And then we have a comma as well to join on to the next idea. If you are more into your fitness. So we've got a conditional phrase there saying if, because we're not sure whether the reader that we are addressing is more into their fitness or not. And then we've used another comma to separate this clause, this idea, from the rest of the text. And then perhaps consider somewhere with more equipment. And then we have a connective word and to add some additional information, saying and an established setup. So make sure that you're using commas and connective words within your sentences to join up your different ideas and create contrasts and additions within your answers. So now we've considered all of the marking criteria and we've seen why this is a good answer. Not only does it effectively answer the question by addressing each point and adapting to the audience and purpose that has been specified, the answer also is very, very clear. It makes sense and it flows effectively, with all of the sentences following on from each other and each paragraph separated from the others in a logical way. We've got accurate spelling, punctuation and grammar throughout the answer, and we've used a range of punctuation effectively. The formatting is correct for an article, and although more formatting features could have been included, it's absolutely adequate for the article format here. So overall, this is a fantastic answer, and you should try to replicate this kind of answer in your exam, adapting carefully to the question and returning to the question every now and then to make sure that what you're writing is fitting with the question in a suitable way. So now that you've seen this, have a go at writing your own answer to the question and check the marking criteria to make sure that you've ticked every box and done everything that the examiner is looking for.